Hi everyone, welcome back to Mommin. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jessica.
It's been a hard and exhausting week. It's January 11th, so it was the week after the Capitol protest that turned into a pretty violent act, being called an act of domestic terrorism.
Yeah, I think everyone's been a little overwhelmed by the violence and just disturbed by the visuals that we've seen and the rhetoric that we've been hearing. And it's been a lot for everyone, their kids, for other countries. It's just been a lot for the world, I think, to witness this disturbing act.
Yes. I know it was shocking that day, but totally shaken up by what we have seen since then, by what the first day you think, oh, it could have been a protest or a riot gone wrong, but it very quickly became clear that it was more than that, and that's scary and sad and hard.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I think it signals that there is a lot of work to be done, both with racism and white supremacy, and you know a lot of divide within the country, and just a lot of work to be done. And we certainly aren't the people who know how to fix it, but are constantly wanting to work towards making this country and the world a better place for everybody.
Yes, working on anti-racism work. You realize you're going, like, I personally know that I have screwed up during it, that I am not always going to say the right thing, and that I'm not an expert, and neither of us are, but knowing that we can do a lot of work on ourselves and in our families, talking to our families and friends and our kids, teaching our kids, so that our world's better for all of our kids. So we don't know what's to come, but hopefully we can accept these election results as a country and move forward towards progress.
Yeah, I think move forward. Just move
Yes.
forward. Yep.
Yeah. In the right way. Move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
So that, we know you're probably not here for that, but we felt like we just couldn't. This was a huge thing in our country, and to not address it and denounce it just didn't feel right for us. So uh, we will move on from that, but we will continue to share resources that we find from people who are experts on our accounts.
Yes, definitely. So, on a much lighter note, do you want to share with everybody about your new addition?
Yes, we had both a very good week in some ways last week, and it was a confusing week. So I didn't know a week ago. Well, I did know a week ago, but 2 weeks ago I had no idea that we would be adding a dog to our family soon. We knew we would at some point, but it didn't feel right. We have a cat that doesn't love people, so we weren't sure how he'd like a dog, and um, I just felt like there's a lot of humans and loudness in our house right now. We're all home all day, every day. So we mentioned that Patrick made a joke that Asher keeps asking about getting a dog. And my mother-in-law said, "Oh, I actually know someone who needs a home for their dog." And it's just like flipped a switch. Patrick was like, "We need to do it." And I was like, "Fine, just ask." And that person luckily was able to keep their dog, but this spiraled very quickly. And all of a sudden, we were looking at a lot of dogs, like, constantly. I think during nap time, I was like trying to get work done that day, and Patrick was just sending all these pictures of dogs, and I just kept looking too. And all of a sudden, by Sunday, we had a call to come do like a meet and greet with a dog, and then on Tuesday or Wednesday we were bringing our dog home. So her name's Pink. She's sweet. We don't really know what kind of dog she is. They thought she was a Great Pyrenees. I don't have no idea if I'm saying that right. And a maybe a golden retriever mix, but she's like not huge. She's like almost 60 pounds. So the vet said they'll see what they think this week. And she's so sweet. We're having so much fun
Yeah.
and learning a
Yeah.
lot about how to take care of a dog with our kids.
Is Asher in heaven though?
Yes, he loves her. He just like wants her to follow him and chase him. And I think he's sad when she doesn't, but she does a lot. She'll follow us for bedtime. We'll like get Tori dressed in her room and then Asher in his, and then we read in his room. And she like follows us for each step, including brushing teeth in the bathroom. It's so sweet.
Oh, that's really
So,
cute.
yes.
Oh, well, she's very cute.
Yes, but it cracks me up. The kids keep calling her Nimmy, which is Jesse's dog,
That's so
especially
funny.
Tori. I like it when Tori's mad at her, especially. She's like, Nimmy, no. And I'm like, what?
Well, that's fair because Nimi barked at Tori once and terrified her.
Oh my gosh, it cracks me up. And then they really want Pink to meet Nimmy. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. So,
Yeah, I mean, Sean and I chatted about that, and we're like, that would be great in the summer
sure.
in the yard because Nimi's
In
not a
the,
dog. Yeah, Nimi doesn't like other dogs as a rule, and she used to. Like, she used to love going to the dog park and chase, but within like a 2 month span, she was attacked by 3 different dogs, and then a year later got attacked. Or no, 2 years later, got pretty deep in like deep,
oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
deep bites. So yeah, so she,
Yeah.
I mean, understandably, I don't blame her for not loving other dogs. She doesn't even love people that much all the time, so
Oh, she loves me and I love
she does
her.
love you. Yeah, she does love you. Nimi's a special kind of dog. She is not a low maintenance dog.
No. And I think we'd have to get to know Pink better before we would know how she would do with Nimmy. Because
Yeah.
I mean, she seems like she had all these animals around and she seems like she really wants to like play aggressively in the snow
Yeah.
with another animal.
Yeah. Whereas, I mean, Nimi is also almost 10
Yeah.
and is kind of a curmudgeon. She's
Yeah.
over it, and I don't blame her. Anyways,
Should we announce our guest for this
yes.
week? So, for this week's episode, we had a great conversation with Emily Ironi. She is the founder of Dairy Fairy, which are nursing and pumping bras that are meant to make women feel feminine and confident. We loved hearing about how she started that business while she had a newborn, made the decision to start that. And we loved hearing about that process. She talked about her life as a mom and her blended family. She lives in California with her daughter, her boyfriend, and his daughter. We loved hearing her story and learning more about her as a mom and as an entrepreneur. And we really hope you enjoy this conversation. We should make note that there is background noise in this episode, just real life, that most of us have kids at home during the day. And so you can hear that a little bit. We personally don't think it impacts the quality of hearing our conversation, but did want to make note of that.
You can find us at momandpodcast.com, on Instagram at momandpodcast, or on our Facebook group.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would leave a rating and review and share it with a friend. Happy listening.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Mommin'.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We are so excited to chat with you. So we love to start with just a little background for our listeners about who you are, where you live, about your family, just a little bit of a background about you.
Absolutely happy to share. We are a merged family. My boyfriend and I have been together for over 4 years, and we all live together with my 8.5-year-old and his 14-year-old. We live in the San Francisco Bay Area, which we absolutely love. We are in a small little community called Belmont in the peninsula. And we are in a house perched up on top of the hill, and it feels like very kind of quiet and green, and it's our little respite right now. We feel a little bit distant from everything, from all the craziness. And Yeah, we also have a newly adopted COVID puppy. Her name is Willa. And she's about 6 months old, and she has just stolen our hearts. So we got a lot of estrogen in this household. And Matt, my boyfriend, is managing it all quite well. He loves being in the company of the women and the girls. So yeah, we're kind of hunkered in and just doing our thing. We're almost like a two offices and two schools going on simultaneously. The youngest is in elementary, the oldest is in high school. My boyfriend, who used to have, an office that was not in the home, is now taken over my office, and I've taken over the kitchen island.
Oh, well,
Oh,
that is
that's
very
generous.
generous of you. I would
Trust me, it was not intentional. It just sort of happened that way, but it was okay because I need to be a little bit closer to, the distance learning part of life. And I mean, I was thinking about it as I was kind of preparing myself mentally for this interview, and I was thinking there's going to be so much reference to COVID and how our lives are now. And someday someone's going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I remember those crazy times. And I remember when things were so upside down. So I'm going to try my hardest not to refer to COVID all the time so that when someone listens to this down the road, they'll be like, we put that stuff behind us. We moved on. We don't have to keep going back to that, but it is quite a reality right now. So
It's funny you say that because Megan and I will sometimes be recording our intros for episodes, and sometimes it's COVID heavy. I'm like, nobody wants to hear more about COVID. Like, we live this every day. We don't need, it's like a break from that.
yes.
Yeah.
but impossible to tell like what you're doing now without it being like, wow, is it different?
Yes, it is. It is such a strong common thread through everything that we do. Every piece of our life has been touched. And I'd like to say that we are handling it in stride and doing great through it, but the reality is it is really turned us all upside down and in way worse than I could have imagined. So that's
Yeah.
just reality,
Yep.
but we keep mommying on, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. How are because you said 8 and 14, is that right?
Yep, almost 9
Okay.
and almost 15. Actually,
Okay.
both are getting closer to, yeah.
How are they getting along? I'm sure they're spending a lot of time together now. Are they getting along well, or are they?
So that age difference is tough
Yeah.
because one is pretty young still, and the other one
Mhm.
is really entering kind of more of womanhood. And they're very different personalities. And they've known each other for 4 years, which is a long time, but they don't have the foundations from birth.
Mhm.
So they do okay. They do
Okay.
okay. It's an evolution, and we just keep working towards helping foster those relationships and letting them also have their independence and
Mhm.
work through that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good advice, not to force it too much.
Yeah, you can't. You
Yeah.
can't, especially with the almost 9-year-old. She's a very strong personality, very
Mhm.
strong-willed, and so you can't force her to do anything.
There's just no point in even trying then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no.
Well, if you're comfortable sharing, would you talk a little bit about how you started your family and if you always knew you wanted to be a mom?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's a really big part of who I am. And I did always know I wanted to be a mother. It started probably when I was a little girl playing with Barbies, and my Barbies were always, making babies. But I just have always been kind of a nurturer, and that's an important thing for me. And I was married when I was 32 and divorced when I was 36. And the relationship was a very meaningful relationship. We just kind of broke down when it came time to start a family. And I said, this is that thing that I'm just not able to negotiate on. And so I decided to kind of, start from scratch. And I was living in LA at the time and trying to date and trying to meet people. And all of a sudden I was 38 and I thought to myself, well, holy moly, how did this happen? My window of opportunity is closing quickly. And, I started doing my research and talking to people about what the options were. And what I heard consistently was, yes, you can freeze your eggs, but they're 38-year-old eggs and your odds are not going to be very good. Your best bet is to freeze embryos. And I said, well, I guess that requires a sperm. And because so in an ironic twist of fate, I actually asked my ex-husband to be my sperm donor. At the time, after he finally was able to speak because he was so shocked by this request, he asked if he could think about it. And when he came back, he said, "I will do it, but I want to remain anonymous." And that was the arrangement. And I understood where he was coming from. Once so I had the embryos, created the embryos and froze them, and that was sort of like a emergency, like in case of emergency break seal kind of situation. But the goal was still to find a partner in my life and actually go the more traditional route. And when that didn't happen, and I was 40 and my father passed away, and my father knew and supported, what I was doing. And at that point, I realized I was just wasting time, that I had missed that opportunity to share this with my father, who was a very special person in my life. And within a few months of his passing, I had the embryos transferred, and I was incredibly, incredibly lucky that I was able to get pregnant. And once that happened, my ex-husband realized that anonymity was not really something that was going to be workable. So he, opened up and was fine. And we still have a very sort of unusual arrangement and understanding about, where his involvement stops and starts. And it's just something that, because we have good communication and we've always been, respectful of each other. I mean, it was the most amicable divorce. Like he said, you take the couch, I'll take the table. It was very, very easy in the big picture of how relationships can end. So yeah, at 41, I gave birth to my daughter, Arden, who is named partly after my dad. Her initials are Arden Rose Ironi, which spells Ari, which was my dad's name. So I feel like she's sort of connected to him. And while she never got to meet him, we talk about him a lot. And so that's been really sweet. And, it was the IVF journey is one that, any parent that goes through it knows that extreme fear, that such deep desire, and then for some, the unimaginable sorrow when it doesn't work. And so, I've kind of been through, because before the IVF, I went through a few rounds of IUI and, all the dedication that it requires, the medications, and I just, it was a really, really hard period. And I feel so fortunate that things went in my favor. And then, now with my boyfriend's daughter, now I feel like, our family has grown and we have, so, we kind of merged this family in very different ways, but, I feel very lucky that we're growing. And, my daughter is constantly saying, "Mommy, you should have another baby. I want you to have another baby." And I'm like, I think we're full. I think the factory is closed. The store is full. We got what we need. We're all good. Yeah.
Oh, that is so amazing. Does she know who her biological, I don't know if you call him her donor or what you refer to him as, but does she know who that is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was always planning on being as honest and truthful with her as she could manage, right? So with the little kids, you can't really get into the nitty gritty, but you can kind of start to seed some ideas. So very early on, we started reading books about how every family can be different. There's a Todd, oh gosh, I can't remember his name now, but he's a famous children's author. And so we kind of started with that. And then, you know, she has met her biological father. And it's funny. So there's actually, and I tell her this all the time, you're so fortunate because you have three men that absolutely love and adore you and are like father figures. So when I was pregnant, I was about 4 months pregnant. I actually met someone and we started dating. And he was around for the first 2.5 years of her life. And it was like a fairy tale, you know. Had never expected to meet somebody while I was pregnant,
Mhm.
let alone have an ongoing relationship and have him love my daughter as much as I do. He was in the delivery room. He was, the third person to hold her, and they still have an incredible bond. So each one of these guys, the donor, the person who was there when she was born, and then my current boyfriend, they all have nicknames and they all represent something. And she has very strong bond with each one of them. So, you know, I think that those relationships will continue to evolve and mature. But yes, she is aware, not of the technicalities and how the
Yeah.
science behind it, but how lucky we are to, have all of these very supportive people and partners in our life.
I mean, that is really lucky, and the fact that she has, someone in her life that was there when she was born, and it sounds like they still
Mhm.
have a relationship, and then, I mean, obviously, your ex-husband, you respected enough that you wanted him to be the donor, so men that will clearly have such a positive impact on her life, like, to get 1 is great, but to get 3, I mean,
Right.
wow, that's really that's so cool.
it's it's very unusual, and it's not all rosy all the time, and I think there are
Mhm.
times where, like when kids, not intending to be malicious, but will say, well, why don't you have this, or and
Mhm.
so it's sort of helping her to explain it to somebody who's not as connected and maybe
Mhm.
open-minded, and just not aware that things can be a little bit more like unconventional.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, and I always feel like that with I have a daughter that we adopted, and I always think of that. I hear people with older kids, like when they ask to do the family tree or like especially when they learn about like DNA and genes in school, and like sometimes the words or things kids say can be hard, but the biggest thing I've heard is teach your kid how to talk about it so they don't have to feel weird, like so they don't have to feel funny about that conversation.
Yep, yep, and flip it into a positive, right? I
Mhm.
say you are so lucky. This is a
Mhm.
gift. This is incredible. It sometimes it doesn't translate as easily when it's shared, further on,
Yeah,
but that's kind of the approach we take.
Right.
that's
And I love that
awesome.
you've been so open and honest with her at the level that she can
Mhm.
understand it, that she's aware of it. Wow,
Yeah.
what an
Yeah.
amazing story. And like, you really wanted to be a mom. You made it happen.
I did. I did. I didn't think through, the future. Like it was, and clearly you don't do IVF in an impulsive way. None of it was impulsive. But I think one of the things I learned was that, I had this vision of how it was all going to look, and there was going to be this perfect little baby, and, the baby, like, you just see all the positive and you don't really think through some of the really like substantial challenges. And as kids grow and become, little people, there's more and more and more challenges. I mean, I joke now that, like, I miss those early years, those baby years, because yes, you were sleep deprived, and yes, your nipples hurt, and yes, were always concerned if your baby was getting enough food, but the baby wasn't talking back to you, right? And like, so you you don't think about these things, right? When you're first, when you have this vision of like, I can't wait to be a mom. And it's all good. Every stage has its highs and lows, and that's just the reality. And I think, like, when I was initially embarking on this journey, I it was a little bit myopic. I was a little bit thinking of, like, the immediate and how I was going to deal with that.
Mhm.
But you learn, and constantly, constantly learning and shifting and adjusting and pivoting and trying to figure out how to do how to tackle the next stage.
Yeah.
So
And has that been too, do you consider yourself a stepmother, or what word do you use for your merged family?
yeah, once again, we're not super
Yeah.
conventional in that. We're very committed.
Okay.
We have no intention of, this being a temporary situation. But marriage hasn't been something that is a priority for us,
Mhm.
especially right now. So it is hard because you lose that label, right? To be a stepmom. So what are you? We just try not to use any kind of like language that has to necessarily classify us,
Mhm.
because we are committed, we are 100% in. But it is an interesting thing, and I think that when we do speak about marriage, it's generally for the sake of the girls
Uh-huh.
and not for us,
Mhm.
right? If we do it, we would do it just to sort of validate and verify to them that it is forever, and that they can maybe perceive us to be certain things. Like for Arden, because she doesn't legally technically have a father, it's
Mhm.
easier because she can relate to my boyfriend as her father.
Mhm.
But for Sydney, she has a mother, and she loves her mother. And I would never ever like, there's nothing that I would want more than for them to have their special bond and for us to have a different kind of a bond.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're all still figuring that out. We'll probably be figuring it out till I'm 100, right?
Right,
Like,
it's just like everyone, right?
yeah,
Yes, and I don't think I mean, you can still be in that role, and you probably could even use that label if it's a label you wanted, even without that, it's not like it has to be perfect, but that's awesome. You've clearly filled that role either way.
right. We try. We all balance each other out pretty well, I'd like to think.
Oh, love that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, tell us a little bit about your professional background and then how Dairy Fairy came to be, your magical bras that I'm so grateful exist.
We both use them while nursing and pumping and
I absolutely love hearing that. I mean, it's so gratifying. So yeah, it's been quite a transition, quite a journey. So my background is actually in advertising. I worked for an ad firm for many years. It was a pretty big firm. We did a lot of really well recognized campaigns, and it was a lot of fun when I was younger. But what I sort of noticed was that you're essentially at the mercy of whatever kind of account you get put on. And I remember when I was assigned to work on a pitch for motor oil, and I thought to myself, gosh, you know what? Do I really want to be an expert in motor oil? Is this what makes me get up with a big smile on my face in the morning? And that was sort of like one of those aha moments where I was like, I think it's time for change, and I need to apply all that I've learned in my advertising experience, which was substantial. I mean, a lot about consumer insights and how you really connect and how to brand. And how do I take all that and apply it into something that I know I will forever love and forever want to pursue? And that was around the same time that I agreed to marry my ex-husband. And so I moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles and started essentially a new life. I got a job literally as like entry level, almost like an intern level position for a fashion company, because I had always loved fashion and used to make clothes for my Barbies, and I used to knit, and I just liked working with my hands. I had a sewing machine and I had ideas, and I thought, if there's ever a time to sort of reinvent myself, I guess this is it. And in the span of 2 years at working for that company, I learned a ton about the fashion industry. And a coworker and I one day went out to lunch, and we were discussing all the things that we had accomplished and all the frustrations that we had with some of the limitations of what we were doing. And during that lunch, we decided to start our own company. And so it was in an accessories realm. And we basically started a high end handbag company called Alexis Hudson. Alexis was her daughter, and Hudson was my dog because I had no
So
children at the
cute.
time. So he was my fur baby. And we really hit the ground running because we had done a lot of the same tasks. She did all the design development, I did all the sales and marketing and operations. And then we had that company for a little over 7 years. And, during the highs, we were in Nordstrom's and Neiman's and Saks and hundreds of boutiques. And we had international distributors. And it was amazing. It was two girls working from home. We never lived in the same city. We never lived in the same state. We were always apart, but we managed it. And it was really fun for a while. And then after the economy took a hit in 2008, it was just incredibly difficult to recover. We just started to see this downward spiral. And it was around 2011 that we were like, we're nearing the end. This isn't going to happen. And that was right around the same time that I had my daughter. So I was in the process of, closing down that company with a newborn baby, trying to nurse and pump and not knowing what my next step was going to be. And it was incredibly stressful. I would equate it almost to the level of stress that I think most of us are experiencing now. And just a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty, and it was pretty scary. So I was sitting there and pumping, and I was wearing just that sort of strap with a zipper and holes, and
Oh gosh, yes.
and I thought, this can't be it. This can't be the best that's out there. And that's kind of how the idea came. And from there, I literally bought some bras and cut and, sewed and stapled and Frankenstein this contraption that had the intention of looking more like a bra. But, I wasn't a bra designer. I didn't have the skills. But I was fortunate to know somebody who did and contracted her to help with, the design process. And she was amazing and introduced me to pattern makers, told me where to go get materials, helped me get connected to factories. And one of my styles is actually named after her daughter. And it was funny when we first connected, I reached out to her through Facebook, and her Facebook profile picture was her and her newborn baby. So, she was really understanding of what I was trying to do. So, flash forward, we, were able to get our first design was named after my daughter. It's the Arden, and that was the style that I used for my Kickstarter campaign when I first tried to sort of not only raise funds for the company, but also validate the idea. And the Kickstarter was such an amazing experience. I don't know, that was almost 8 years ago. I don't know what it would be like now, but at the time, it was so validating and wonderful to see so many women pregnant, nursing or not. I mean, I had just people who were like, this is incredible. I want to get behind this. It was a lot of work, a ton of work. I mean, I spent, a couple good months prepping for the Kickstarter to go live, between the video portions and the product highlights, and really seeding the idea, reaching out to hundreds of bloggers. I'd curated a whole list of editors and bloggers and trying to get the word out. But that was that once that was campaign was successful, I sort of hit the ground running.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, I am not even the slightest bit surprised that it had such phenomenal feedback, because having a bra that's all in one, I mean, I didn't know that that existed when I first started. So I had my daughter in 2016 or 2016. But that frustration of wearing a bra and then having to switch, and the extra time when you're pumping, especially when you're pumping at work, you don't have extra minutes to be swapping out bras in between getting your pump parts out. I cried when I found your bra, and because they're also so pretty and they make you feel less like a cow when it's just pumping. So they're amazing, and I'm sure the feedback was just overwhelmingly positive and responsive.
Yeah. Definitely you hit on, the sort of the pillars of what we're about, which is, you want that functionality. You don't want to have to change again and again. And when a woman is pumping and she's away from her baby, she's got to change at least 3, 4 times a day. And that is just a waste of time. It's an inconvenience. And so it's that efficiency, but also femininity and just reclaiming yourself as a woman.
Mhm.
I think, a lot of women, when they first are pregnant, they have this, like, you get the pregnancy glow and you show off the bump and you feel like, you just feel really wonderful and happy and grateful. And then the baby arrives and you're tired and your nipples hurt. And, there are
Mhm.
bumps and lumps where there didn't used to be any. And what just in interviewing women, we found that women's self-confidence was really affected. And that was the other part of this is like, how do we uplift women? How do we remind them, like, you are still, a sexy creature. You are still able to, reclaim yourself. And there's a lot of talk about self-care now and making sure. So this is just a part of your self-care, having that really pretty lacy bra that's going to be there to kind of like, you look down and you're like, yes, I don't have to wear granny panties anymore. I don't have to wear a strap with a zipper, like like it's not necessary. There are better ways of doing things that sort of elevate the whole experience, because I can guarantee you no mom woke up one day and said, I can't wait to pump. Like, it's not the thing that you set out to do with because it's fun or glamorous or sexy. It's a thing you do because you do it selflessly for your baby. So why
Mhm.
not just improve the experience a tad? And that was kind of like, the starting point. And then now we really try to listen to the other pain points that moms will have around, I some moms love underwire. They can't wear bras that don't have underwire. Other moms will run as fast as they can away from underwire. Leaks and pads and like there's so many other parts and features that can address people's pain points or mom's pain points. So, that's always what keeps me up at night is what's next? How do we continue to do this in an ingenious way? There's thousands of nursing bras out there. How do we make ours completely different? How do we stand apart? What do we do that doesn't already exist? And that innovation element, that's what I get the most excited about. So,
I have to say that's when you bring up that strap, it almost makes me nauseous because I hated that so much and it never worked right. And like I would try to pump, whatever time of day, like probably nighttime, and I would feel like sick, like, oh, I have to take everything off and it's cold and like then I have to pump. And I started pumping while feeding my baby some mornings, and, like, you can't wear that. And so, like, I could wear my Dairy Fairy bra and feed him on one side and pump on the other, and that sounds really little, but it is not. Like, I could almost cry right now remembering what a relief that was. So, it is so appreciated. I am so thankful it existed, and Jessie told me about it because she had her baby first.
yeah. Well, no, I'm just so glad you found it because that, if it even extended your journey just a little bit or helped you, store a little extra milk or, increased your supply or, just little things. Look, bras aren't saving lives, but we really try to touch and improve a little bit. Like, I take everything into perspective, but when I hear mom, and I've had moms that literally have started to cry, like you said, where they're like, I had lost all hope and I didn't think that I could ever, do this successfully. And your bra helped. And I was like, wow, you
Yeah,
know,
because while you say it's not saving lives, while it might not literally be saving lives, I will tell you, I mean, I was in a dark place after I had my daughter, and it was something that, like, yes, it might seem so small to someone who maybe hasn't had that journey, but someone who has struggled with breastfeeding and pumping, and then, feeling like you're in a stranger's body and feeling like, "Oh, I'm in this really hideous bra," and, like, so to find something,
Mhm.
I mean, it did make a huge impact for me, and I tell everyone that I know about it, because it was also shocking to me that it didn't exist. Like, I couldn't find anything else until I found Dairy Fairy that had the 2-in-1, nursing and pumping. So no, you might not be in the ER, but you're making an impact, and I can say that firsthand. So thank you.
Well, oh, thank you. That's really lovely to hear.
And what was that like? Well, I guess maybe you weren't a single mother for all of it, or I don't know if you considered yourself one, but starting a company and being a mom and a single mother for portions of it, what was that like?
Yeah, it was very hard. So I, when I first embarked on the journey, I was single. Then I was in a relationship for 2.5 years, and I was definitely supported. But after that relationship ended, I was single for a long time until I met my current boyfriend, and those were very, very difficult years. And it's partly the day to day, but it's also this knowing that if something, God forbid, was to happen, there is no fallback. There is no one else there that can pick up the pieces. And when I had my daughter and started the business at the same time, these are two, I joke, I had two babies, within 6 months. And both of these, you know, very, very important, meaningful things to me needed my attention. And it was always a struggle to manage how to balance those two. Because without the business, there was no money, right? And it it makes it very challenging to juggle the two and know where to put your focus and your attention when both require more than you can give.
Mhm.
So that was very, very difficult. I'm definitely more supported now on all levels, and it is quite a treat. So yeah, that's there was some rough years there, and scary years. And it's like you'll have one success on one side, but then you're sort of taking a few steps back on the other.
Mm.
But fortunately, we're in a much better place now.
Yeah. 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 That's tough. It's tough being a mom and working, but I think running your own business and being a single parent is probably an experience a lot of people maybe can't appreciate what that's like.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And you can't, I mean, not to say that I want to do this, but if things now are so overwhelming and really challenging in the home, if I had a job where I was an employee, I might say, I'm going to take a year off and really focus on what's happening in home. But when it's your
mhm.
own business, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't just disconnect and reprioritize and then come back later. There'll be nothing to come back to.
Mhm.
That's a
So,
challenge too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
well, and to be fair, the flip side of it is when you are an entrepreneur and you have your own business, you actually have a lot of liberties with how you manage your time and
Mhm.
you know um, what you want to do and prioritize. So there's pros and cons, and you certainly don't want to make it sound like entrepreneurship is all bad, or that being a single parent is the worst thing in the world. It
Mhm.
just takes a little bit more planning and sort of
Mhm.
self-awareness and evaluating. And so I've been doing a lot of that. And just when you feel like you get your footing, then things change on you.
Yes,
you know
exactly.
Isn't that the whole thing of motherhood? Yeah.
yep, yep, exactly.
Meg, do you want, since we're so close to end, do you want to switch and just do some rapid fire, or do you have any?
Yeah, well, let's
Okay,
do it. Yes, let's
awesome.
shift gears.
All right. So we're gonna just shoot a bunch of questions your way, just some quick ones. So
Sure.
what is it that you do for some self-care and to take care of just you?
Well, the options are much more limited these days.
Yeah.
Going to my yoga class isn't really an option right now at the moment. But I this is going to sound like the simplest thing, but like the one thing that I can do consistently and gives me that like breath of fresh air that I need is a super long shower. I mean, like really long. um, it's just that just the right enough or enough disconnecting for me where I'm in the home, I'm still kind of available, but so disconnected. Don't you see the door is closed, you don't come in. Yeah, I get the steam going. I have this
Mhm.
like sort of aromatherapy spray, so it's a little spa, a little homemade spa moment.
Man, that sounds great today.
I love that. And what is a goal that you have for you and your family?
Again, right now it's a little bit challenging, but just trying to find something new, a new experience, opening our minds and trying something that might seem scary. And if it's whatever that thing is something we collectively can do, would be amazing because now with the age differences and all that, there's not a lot of overlap. So if we can find that thing, we are finally at the point where I think everybody can safely ride a bike. Maybe going on family bike ride is a little less scary. So, something like that, but just to try to always find that next thing, and not really get too um, comfortable in just the day to day, and try to open our minds to doing new things.
That's awesome.
And what has been either a tip that you give to people or a tip that you received about parenting? What has been your favorite parenting tip?
Yep, yep. Well, this part is very near and dear to me because, again, what I was saying, you don't really know what you're getting into until you're in it. And my daughter was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and we've had a lot of challenges, and we continue to. And one of the things that I've kind of learned and I'm trying to apply within my own life is really not to sweat the small stuff. I felt for a long time like I was always swimming upstream and really fighting to get a lot of things managed that were outside of her capabilities. And so just giving myself that sort of like, it's okay. It's not going to be perfect. We're just going to go with it. And when you give yourself that liberty, it's just, I don't get as worked up, because I was getting worked up a lot. Um, and the other thing I would say that's always useful is reverse psychology seems to work 99.9% of the time. So that's a go-to for me. Obviously, everybody's dynamics are different, kids are different, but that is something that as a parent has been very useful for us.
So funny how human minds work, that
Well,
it does work a lot of the time.
mhm.
So it didn't work for me for lunch today, but I did try.
Was
Yeah,
there something that helped you shift that mindset at all? I know that could be like a whole book probably, but
yeah,
I'm not.
yes. I would say probably exhaustion.
Just kind of that rock bottom of I have to take
Yes, yes,
this.
when there's no other alternative.
Got it.
Um, well, and when you try a lot of other things, right? You try to be forceful, you try to, just explain and discuss, and you go through all the different different steps, and then, you finally at some point have to say, it's not working because it's just not meant to work.
Mhm,
It's just
mhm.
not the right approach in this case with these people. But so that for me, maybe that's more of a sanity saver.
Mhm.
Um, But it seems to have impact on everybody, right? Because when I'm more grounded and calm, that sort of translates to everybody around.
Oh, the kids pick up adult energy in a way
Oh
that
yeah,
I like could not have imagined.
yeah, exactly.
What's the best part about being a mom to you?
Um, well, gosh, I mean, like just showing up, just having that thing that is the root of getting up in the morning. What are we here for? For me, it's to guide. I want to help my girl because I'll never be able to fully tell her what to do. I want to guide her so that she knows what to do. She's a very determined, stubborn, and strong girl. And this could serve her very well in life if she knows how to manage herself and guide herself. So, it's the best and the hardest because I am always trying to guide her towards independent thinking, but also within the framework of what society expects and how to be successful in society. And so we're not always successful, but that said, she's not even 9. The 14-year-old has an amazing moral compass. She is a fantastic student. She doesn't need much guidance because she's very capable on her own. So, it's like it is really interesting seeing the different personalities and what each one needs. One probably needs a lot more sort of like corralling, and the other one needs more room to run. But yeah, so that's kind of like every day,
Yeah.
the challenge and the happiness and
Yeah.
the ups and downs.
It's really beautiful how you said it.
Well, Emily, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being so open and sharing all of your experiences with us. If you can tell everyone where they can find you and find your wonderful bras.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And thank you for having me again. So the Dairy Fairy can be found on our website, which is shop.thedairyfairy.com. We're on Instagram where you can really see what's going on, what we're developing, the new colors and promotions. And that's at _Dairy Fairy. And I also wanted to mention that we just launched a sister brand to the Dairy Fairy, and that's called Milkful. Milkful is essentially the same product in that, it's beautiful, functional, nursing and hands-free pumping bras, but it's for the plus size community. And the reason we started that was because I was consistently getting feedback from moms saying, I love what you're doing, but it doesn't fit me. And it really kind of cut me to the core to feel like, oh, here I am supporting all moms, and then realizing that wasn't the case. I wasn't supporting all moms. And so like I said, we recently launched Milkful, which is at milkfulmom.com, and that's the bras that range in size up to a 50G. And so it just, to me, completes the circle of like really like having a community that is all about, diversity and size inclusivity and making sure that we're really remembering every single mom, not just some.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you again so much for your time. It's so awesome to speak to someone who like impacted our lives so much.
Ah, well, thank you for broadcasting our message and supporting the brand and the products. I'm really grateful for that, and lovely, lovely to meet you guys.
You as
You
well.
too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Emily. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with her. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would leave a rating and review and share it with a friend. Remember, you can find us at momandpodcast.com, at Mom and Podcast on Instagram, and our Mom and Podcast Facebook group. Have a great week.